Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We are delighted to have a few of our Innovia team members with us. Jim, Gino, and Holly will be presenting on Business Central Wave Report, our 2022 Wave 1. So as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and we will post it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And you can find our library under our resources tab on our website. And we encourage you to ask questions during our presentation, so please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will get them answered at the end of our session. So now I will turn it over to Jim to kick off our presentation.
Thanks very much, Angie, and thanks all of you for joining us. And on our presentation on the BC Wave Report. This is the first of many to come, and we look forward to presenting what's new and exciting and our favorite things from the Wave releases as they come along in the semi-annual. Page down, come on. Oh, it's not advancing, hold on. There we go. I guess you can see us all live. Once again, I'm Jim Augenstein, Customer Engagement Specialist here at Innovia. Been here a couple of years and been a NAV since the beginning of time pretty much, and really am quite the NAV fan and Business Central fan. So I'll ask my other team members to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump in the presentation. Over to you, Gino.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gino Pack. I'm the Director of Project Teams here at Innovia. I've been at Innovia for just over 3 years now. I lead all of our ERP implementation teams here, carrying out the Business Central implementation projects. And I came from the end user side. I've been using NAV since 2009, starting with NAV 2009, working all the way up through every major iteration until now Business Central. I'm very passionate about the product, and one thing you'll learn about me is I'm a fan of release notes. That's one of the things that I like to look at as new releases are coming. So this is definitely one of my favorite webinars that I get to conduct. Holly?
Hey, thanks guys, and I'm Holly Kudo. I'm also a Customer Engagement Specialist, better known as a gift to you from Innovia Consulting, and along with Jim. Again, my passion is this product. I love it. I live it. I breathe it. My favorite place to be is on site with clients, looking and digging into their system and being under the hood. And so I don't read the release notes as thoroughly as Gino does, but I do like looking at them, and I always get excited. It's like Christmas Day when they come out and I get to unpack all the cool new things that are in there. My background comes from Business Central and NAV. 15 years I've been using the product, starting at 3.7 in a classic client, and moved up through that from the end user side over to partner side. And I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Thanks, Holly. And Gino, classic client. Boy, we've come a long way, haven't we?
That we have.
Okay, we're all going to hide our cameras. Our backgrounds are a bit busy, and GoToWebinar doesn't give us a good vehicle to mask our backgrounds. So we're going to hide our cameras. You've seen us all live, and then we'll jump on to the presentation. 1 second. Okay, just a general thought, a couple of comments. Business Central momentum, and took these next two slides from a presentation that Microsoft did, and I think it really speaks to what's happening in our little community and the kind of growth and momentum that we've seen in the product. And these numbers really kind of surprised me. Microsoft doesn't share a lot of numbers typically. They keep most of the stuff pretty close to the vest, so it's nice to get a few very important metrics here. So between 2019 and today, we have seen the number of partners that are selling Business Central grow from 1,400 to 3,800, doubling, more than doubling in just a couple of years. There's a tremendous amount of excitement around this product. In 2019, there was 450 roughly solutions on AppSource, and now there's 2,200 plus, probably more today. And for those of you that are new or newly watching or newly listening, learning about Business Central, AppSource is where we go to find solutions to extend Business Central into areas that it doesn't go natively. It's where we can download applications. Typically, in the past, we would have done that from an ISV. and worked through them to get them installed. Now you can download them and evaluate them yourself. And more than 60% growth year over year. That's phenomenal. So there's no doubt that Business Central is being widely adopted. Customers, you guys like it. You like what you see. You like the story that it tells and the Microsoft story, and you're adopting it in large numbers, and we're excited by that. Shamelessly stolen from the Microsoft presentation, Dynamics Business Central is the most fully integrated stack on the most secure cloud, which allows you to adapt faster, perform better, and work smarter, and that's so true. I've been doing this for quite a while, and many years ago in the early 90s, we were selling islands of information. That's how we talked to customers about our applications. At the time, we talked about an integration to Excel. Well, 30 years later, and now we really have a seamless tight integration, not just to Excel, but the other Microsoft stack. The Power Platform is an amazing platform with great potential. The developer tools are new and modern, which means you can attract a talent, not just from the business or the CAL world that we've been in for so many years, and the Azure and platform and other applications that brings to the table. It's just all tightly coupled, and there's some exciting new things in this release around making that integration even more tight. So we're excited by Business Central. Obviously, I think you can sense the passion in all of our voices and the way we approach the presentation today. So with that, I'm going to pass to Gino, and Gino is going to take us through his top admin and development enhancements. Then Holly will follow with finance, and I will bring up the tail end with operational areas. So off to you, Gino.
Awesome, thank you, Jim. And as with every release, Microsoft has really jam-packed this release with a lot of cool features that really mostly affect one, how to administer Business Central from a BC admin perspective, an IT admin perspective, an analyst perspective, and then on top of it, you've got the development and usability of the application that is affected by what the changes that come with every release. We would be able to have a 1-hour webinar just on all of the admin and development and usability enhancements that Microsoft brought to this release now. But so what I had to do is I had to sort through and find my favorites. So Jim, if you can go to the next slide for me really fast. These are the areas that I picked as my favorite areas and the most widely affected areas that you as the user or the admin or the analyst are going to see in this release. First, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the enhancements to telemetry, permission set changes that Microsoft is making over this release, a new functionality that Microsoft is releasing across their stack called GDAP, which stands for Granular Delegated Admin Privileges. It's once again Microsoft's push for more enhanced security in a more cloud world. Performance analysis within the Business Central application and modern client improvements. Go ahead to the next slide, please, Jim. Let's start with our enhancements to telemetry. Starting with Business Central 13 or 14, Microsoft introduced this new technology to help analyze the performance of your Business Central environment called telemetry. And they use an Azure product called Azure Application Insights that basically takes all of this telemetry and event signals that is emitted from Business Central and throws them into a database that then you can actually form and be able to do your own analysis on how your application is performing. And with every release, Microsoft is continuing to add new telemetry signals to the Business Central environment. So you as the IT admin or the Microsoft partner or a developer can analyze how users are using your application, how what you're doing is affecting the performance of the application and overall health, and being able to take a real proactive approach to how your environment is responding to your users day to day. And some of those enhancements are listed here. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one because once again, there are a ton, but these are some of my favorites. So error dialogues that pop up in the environment, users are now, those error dialogues are now being emitted into application insights so you can report on the most common errors that are happening in your environment. And also, You got the end user who forgets to take a screenshot of the error. Now that error message is logged in telemetry for an admin to take a look at. Support engineers can now see user IDs in telemetry. Before, you could not do that. Microsoft is doing this by assigning a GUID ID to a username within Business Central. So Microsoft is still following all of the security and compliance requirements that it promises with the product. So it is masking the user ID, but now you're able to get an idea of what users are causing significant performance issues in the environment if you don't realize it's your application. Database locks are now being logged into telemetry, so you can start analyzing those. Lifecycle events such as when applications in your environment are updated, when code is pushed, when your environment is updated is all being added to telemetry. Permission errors are being logged in telemetry. Health and uptake of features. This one is probably my favorite out of all of them that are being released, because what it really allows you to do is look at the usability of your application. What the health and uptake of features is that when you as an ISV or you as a partner or you as a developer release a feature, you can now analyze and subscribe to certain code units within the Business Central environment that will allow you to see how your users are using your product. How are they clicking around? How are they how are they being onboarded onto the product? How many users are actually taking advantage of the feature that you've implemented? That can all be tracked now through telemetry. And then one minor one is votes on error messages. You can actually, users can vote on whether an error message is positive or negative. And that will get through to telemetry as well. Next slide, Jim.
Actually, and if I may, I think that's one of my favorites, actually, when the votes on error messages, because so many times I get one, and I am definitely the epitome of a user that'll break things, and I get the message, and I have no clue what that means. So I think that's great. I think it'll help them fine tune those messages.
Yep. Next item on the list of my favorite BC admin and development changes, permission set changes. So there's two sides to this story here. Microsoft in the last release 2021 Wave 2, they announced that they are converting permission sets from data to objects. So now there is a new object type on the development side that is a permission set object, where you can now, permissions are built based off objects instead of data. Now, what this allows a developer to do is to assign more granular permissions to items that they'll be made, or customizations that they're making to the system. Now, what does that do on the admin side? A couple changes that are coming through this release is one, you can assign default permission sets when a user signs up for Business Central. There's special handling that is set with permission sets when it comes to entitlements. And then also on the development side, you can elevate permissions in critical code paths. So example, how many times have you tried to open up a company in Business Central and you're prevented from even logging in because you have you're missing a permission set and an object that is preventing you from getting in the system? Now developers can elevate permission sets for their customization, so it won't block a sign-in process when users are trying to log into the system. Next slide, please, Jim. This slide is actually showing a demo quickly of the new functionality called license configuration. On the left-hand side, you see a list of all the Business Central licenses that are available in the environment. And on the right-hand side, I'm able to configure those licenses to come with default permission sets. So I know if there are users that have a Dynamics 365 premium license, I want them to have the email usage and the ISV permission sets needed for the first time they log in. I don't have to wait till they log in before I assign those permission sets to them, which I feel is a very, very cool feature. Next slide, Jim. Next item I want to talk about is GDAP. Granular dedicated admin privileges. This particular one I can go an hour on, but I'm only going to hit the highlights. Basically what it is you no longer need to assign your Microsoft partner global admin privileges for your environment. What you can do is you can give them admin permissions for only specific areas of your Microsoft 365 tenant. And you can put those permissions to be time bound. So once that time is up, your permissions can be revoked. This is an incredible release from Microsoft in the essence of wanting to keep their environments secure, keeping people out who shouldn't be in, and also controlling based off of security requirements that are part of your company and part of your network. Like I said, there will be a further webinar just on this, but this is actually a new feature where Microsoft is allowing you to limit the areas of your Microsoft tenant that visitors can be a part of.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we really needed another acronym.
Yeah, exactly. Another added to the Microsoft acronym book. Performance. This is another one that I am very passionate about. Microsoft has released a couple new features when it comes to performance analysis in the system. The first one is your in-client performance profiler. In this situation, you can actually record think of it as your permission set recorder that has been in the environment for a while. What the in-client performance profiler does is it allows you to record a process that a user is experiencing, and then it will mark the different tasks that took place, the pages that they entered, even the call stack that was ran in the code to analyze how the actions are being performed so you can identify where the application is hanging up. And then the second piece is database insights. You can now get, one big complaint that I've heard from admins specifically is in SAS, you don't have direct access to SQL anymore. You can't run SQL Profiler, you can't analyze queries, you can't do that anymore. Well, Microsoft is adding a little bit more back into the Business Central UI with the ability to look for missing indexes as well as look at the weight statistics on your SQL environment. I've got a couple screenshots here. If you go to the next slide there, Jim. On the performance profiler, as you can see here, you can, when you start running the performance profiler, the first screenshot to the left, what you can analyze is the applications or extensions that are active while the performance profiler was running, and how those applications or apps or extensions, whatever you call them, are actually performing in the environment. Top right-hand corner is the time spent by application object. It shows you how long you were in that actual object that you were going through in your process. And then the call tree at the very bottom is the important part for developers. What it's doing is it's looking at all the events that were called as you were performing your action in the UI, and it is timing it. So you can get an idea of, okay, where is my application being hung up? It looks like on this case, it's on the on after get current record. So that's the trigger on the customer list I'm going to want to look at for performance issues in my environment. So this is a very, very cool feature. Next slide. On the SQL side, this is all within the Business Central UI. So you have your database weight statistics where you can take a look at the weight categories and the various telemetry that comes out of that from the actual SQL environment that your Business Central tenant is running on. And then the right-hand side is the missing indexes. So as your users are using the environment, Business Central is taking in the telemetry. SQL Server is emitting any type of recommendation it can for adding missing indexes into your environment. Next slide, Jim. And then the next one I want to talk about is your modern client improvements. So there's a number of client improvements that your end users are going to be able to see. First one is your share menu. There's an addition of a copy link feature. Usability enhancements in general for the modern client when it comes to navigation, data entry, and then just general look and feel. Microsoft is really making the application run a lot smoother by updating the types of transitions when opening and closing pages. how the application interacts with data entry when you're adding lines of data to a list page, and then just the general look and feel by updating the different application or the icons and fonts throughout it. There's a new find entries functionality, which is probably one of my favorite pieces of this release, which I'll show you here in a second. And then there is the new Power Web app, the PWA desktop app that's delivering a desktop app experience for your users that just can't get past using a web browser for their ERP system. The PWA desktop app that was delivered with this application will help calm the nerves of some of those users. Go ahead and go to the next slide here, Jim. For the usability enhancements, here's one of my favorite features. So you can release multiple documents by selecting them in your UI, selecting release, and then Business Central will then release all the documents at once instead of you having to release them all individually. Next slide, Jim. The share sheet, so being able to share information out of Business Central, you can copy an embedded link and paste it into an email or your team's client. Let's say that I want to send Holly and Jim a sales order for them to review the pricing before I go ahead and release it. I can copy a link, paste it in an email. If Holly and Jim were to click on that specific link, it will take them directly to that sales order in Business Central. They don't have to go navigating through the environment to be able to get to a specific item I want to show. Next slide. And then the find entries functionality. This one is one of my favorites. Have you ever just wanted to search the entire system based off of something, that piece of information that you have, instead of having to navigate through every single document type or every single area of Business Central to find it? Well, the new find entries functionality that's located right within your role center gives you the ability to search for things like business contacts, customers, items, documents, entries. And the example that I'm posing here is I have a customer's purchase order number. So what I'm doing is I'm searching for every document in the system based off of the purchase order number that the customer gave me or the external document number that I was given. And as you can see, based off my demo here, it's bringing up the posted sales shipment and the sales order that's associated with that external document number. So being able to search the system is becoming easier and easier. Next slide. And the last item is your Power Web App desktop app experience. So in the Microsoft Store on your Windows 10 or Windows 11 PC, you can install the Dynamics 365 Business Central app. And what it will do is it will install the app locally on your computer, so you can have a desktop app experience instead of having to open up your web browser and go to the Business Central or your Business Central tenant website. This makes it a lot easier. This gives the look and feel of having the application installed on your computer, and it has all the same functionality as the web version of Business Central. Microsoft has released this with 2022 Wave 2, and right now it only works with Business Central SaaS customers, but it provides a very, very cool way for you to sort through your, or to get to your application, just another way to bring your users comfort. Alrighty, I think that's my last slide, Jim, and I can turn it over to Holly for her demo.
I have a quick question for you about on the last feature. So I frequently manage or go into different environments. On the desktop app, is it easy to control different environments, production and sandbox and such?
Yeah, so this first iteration of the app is only for production environments. Microsoft has not released a way to get into sandbox environments yet from this app, but I would imagine that it's forthcoming here with the one of the center releases. Yeah.
Well, it's a good start.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, Holly, you ready?
I'm ready. I think I'm ready. My brain is now filled with Gino's information. So back to finance brain. So these were our top picks for finance. There was a lot packed into the finance section in this wave. So do get out on docs.com and review them all from the finance side of the product. But these were our top picks for finance. that we're going to talk about. So the new capabilities and reporting and account schedules, bank reconciliation enhancements. I have that starred. That's an important one. If you're on the call or you're here and you're not your finance person, you need to call this out, and they need to be paying attention to the bank reconciliations and the changes in this wave and upcoming waves for your company. Consolidating customers and vendors, my favorite, and map to Dataverse. I think this is like a really cool thing. It's right up there with Dr. Strange and Metaverse. And then controlling more over deferrals, which was, you know, really difficult. They've added some features to help with that. And then talking about Excel reporting, design, and layouts. So let's go to the next slide. So again, the big one here, I think out of all of the things in this wave for finance is the standardization of the bank reconciliation process. So currently, in case you aren't aware, there's two versions. There's a worldwide version, and then there's the North American version. They are now standardizing that. It's moving to a global bank reconciliation, very similar, but more robust. And so with that change, it's going to phase out that North American version we're used to using. So it's coming out this wave. You can still continue using North American and begin to make that transition and learn about the standard and see what that look and feel is going forward. But know that it is coming forward. There's a lot of cool features that are part of it. You're going to have the overview of your outstanding checks and payments that we didn't have in the current one. There's features to the bank deposits. This is my favorite around the whole bank reconciliation and finance as far as reconciling things is the bank deposits are going to have lump sum posting, something we didn't have here. So when you post to your deposits or your cash receipts and it goes into your GL, you have to bundle them all up to how much did you send to the bank versus it just being the total. And so that becomes cumbersome sometimes. And so now you have a feature where you can click on lump sum posting and you can enter all those checks, total them up, take them to the bank has one number, and now your bank rec has, and your GL entry has one number instead of a list of all of the separate checks going in, which I thought that was a really cool feature in this release. Reporting improvements, so we're going to see that again, GL balances, the outstanding checks and payments are going to appear on those reports. As you see, another comparable with that whole worksheet and deposit pages. Again, you'll have those features rolled out standard instead of our version versus the worldwide version. Next slide. So again, as I said, important to us in America because October of 23, we will have to use the standard bank reconciliation for your bank recs. The one that we use today will go away. So the worksheet and the deposit pages we have today will no longer be available to use. Anything we've posted up to that point will still be there in our system. We'll be able to see that posted bank reconciliation, posted deposits. Those won't disappear. You'll still be able to see them and print them. You will no longer create new ones at that point. So that is our target date. As they're rolling this out, making those changes, make sure you're getting on the bandwagon and learning.
Gino, Jim, I think we lost Holly.
I
Yeah,
think we
I'm
lost
here.
Holly as well.
Okay. Well,
So-
let's give her a third.
Yeah, a couple seconds. If we jump forward to your presentation, we can go back.
Sure, I can do that if we need to. Okay, let's wait for Holly to catch back up to us. Maybe she lost internet, who knows? Give me just 1 second to go to my slides, hold on. Okay, are you seeing, oh, did you see the Jim's page?
I did, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so from the operations perspective, and but this we mean production, warehousing, jobs. That's the operations kind of phase. That's how we kind of subdivided. These are my top new features. Sell to and build to has now been added to jobs, and I also find it interesting that Microsoft is referring to jobs as projects in some of the documentation. We've always called it jobs in the past because that's the module name, but they're calling it projects. So that makes me wonder if there's something new coming down the road in that area. But jobs/projects. There's a new user interface to support variants and locations on the demand forecast. There's default dimensions on locations, fixed quantity for bill of materials for components. One of my top favorites is inventory and warehouse picks for jobs and report selections for jobs. And I see that Holly, are you back? Speak.
I am back.
Okay, let me go back to your slides with my teasers, and we'll let come back here. So hold on just 1 second. We were, I think, here on the standard bank rec. Is that the next one you wanted? Were you finished with the other previous one?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So standard bank reconciliation. This is a picture of the standard bank reconciliation form and what it's going to look like. Again, the same things that we've talked about on the previous page. You can see you have both your deposits and your checks and your credits and your debits, and you're going to have those fields for outstanding items as well. Another thing that they've added here alongside of the deposit lump sums is the test report. So now you're going to have a test report for your bank statements that you could go in and deal with as well. Next slide. I know no one wanted to hear about bank recs, that's why I froze. Next slide.
I did.
Oh, see, mine is really not going well. I'm still
I'm
on
on
the same.
upgraded tenant bank reconciliation slide.
Yeah, mine's not advanced. There we go. Goodness. All right, so the upgraded tenant bank reconciliation slide. This is where when you go in your tenant, you could change it over to that standard bank reconciliation with the authorizations. Again, you need to do that from their features page first, and then go into here and you can set it up so you can give it a try. Put it in your sandbox and give it a whirl and see how you like it. Let us know. Next slide. Really taking long. I am so sorry. Consolidation, customers, and vendor balances. So this, I think, was my very favorite thing that popped up, and I was surprised by something I wanted for years. So when I was on the end user side, this would come up constantly. We'd have people who were both our customer, and we bought stuff from them. They were a vendor, and they'd call and say, hey, I owe you some money. Just deduct what you owe me from what I owe you and send me off a check, or vice versa, right? You owe me and I owe you, just send me a check for the difference. And it sounds simple, but in NAV it was not simple. It meant creating a bunch of credit memos and debit memos to make it all happen and flush out, or a bunch of ledger entries behind the scenes. So now they've put it in so that now you can consolidate that. So you have on your vendor card and your customer card, you can associate them with the opposite. So you can see here on our screen print on the customer card, you can add the vendor number and their information, and on the vendor card, the same thing as well. So you have them together and they are married together, consolidated, which is pretty cool. And so I know what you're thinking. The next thing is, so okay, now what happens? So if you go to the next slide, we will see that in your payment journal, you can now utilize that. So you have the net customer vendor balances. So as you're doing payments, it pulls in, and you can see here it's taking what we owe them as a vendor, it's deducting what they owe us as a customer, it's going to send them the check for the difference, do all of the journal entries in the background, and we're good to go. So to me, this was a big, big win for the finance team. Next slide. So this is about the Dataverse. So Gino's the one who's going to have to talk about Dataverse if you want more information on the Dataverse. But Microsoft has its own, what I like to call is just human giant warehouse of data and information. And part of what they have there is creating these fabulous, what they call, I think it's options. And so within those option sets, you can now pull down some of them into your system. So you could pull down payment terms and shipping methods and shipping agents into your Business Central environment. The one that hits me the hardest is your payment terms. I know I spent lots of time doing payment terms to make sure that they match. So when a customer paid me net 60 on day 25, I would figure out the formulas behind the scenes, create that payment term so that it would populate correct, so I could match my cash flow and be pretty accurate. And so being able to pull that down and have those formulas and all those different things from the Dataverse is a really cool feature. I only see this growing and growing and growing. I think we'll see longitude, latitudes you could pull down. Possibly they'll end up pulling UPS, FedEx, things like that in there. But I think this is a really cool beginning of a new feature for us and way to get data into the system without doing a lot of legwork. Next slide. So more control over the deferral postings. This is an area not widely used, and mostly because, as it says, it's deferral posting. So we want to defer the posting and payment further out into the life cycle. And one of the problems with that was it was constrained by our posting date ranges. So to use it, you would have to constantly be changing posting date ranges to accommodate it. And so it was a frustration for the accounting team. And so they have now given us more control over that. And so here you can see they've added those posting date ranges that we're allowed to do deferral posting in. So we don't have that issue anymore. So we can push that out into the future. So we can create those deferrals and post them as we need to without having any issues around our posting date ranges. And next slide. And here's the other area where they've added a feature, and so we have more options in the start dates. And so you can see we can set it up for the beginning of the next year, next period. So added features again, continued updates on those deferral postings to help make it more usable and more efficient for us when we want to use deferral postings. Next slide. So there's been a lot of reporting improvements in the background as well. So there are some new capabilities around the financial reporting and those account schedules that are out there for us. Again, report landing pages are really nice. They've really done a great job of making the docs.com reporting area more user-friendly with a lot better descriptions on what the reporting is there and how it functions for us. So make sure you're utilizing that. Again, in your SaaS system, if you're on a report page and you click on help and you look at the very first line, it'll say more about this report page. That's a great place to start and utilize some of that information from them and what that report is meant to be about. So great things there. And then using Excel to design layouts for reports. This was another great feature. I think we kind of fought about who is going to get to even say something about it. But so Excel design layouts was a really cool add. Just like you can use Word to design your reports, you can now use Excel to design reports and use your data sets. Next slide. And so here's an example for you guys to take a peek at how to use Excel to design layouts for reports. And you can see here an example of that, how it brings that data set in and how you can drill down and interact with the data. And you have it there in your Excel spreadsheet, like everybody's always loved. We don't like to get away from them. So now they've made that just like the desktop version available to us. We can bring things into Excel and create reporting there, which I think is going to be widely used. And another great webinar yet to come on how to use this more robustly going forward. Next slide. That might be my last one.
Yes, off to me. Okay, so I did my list already, so we'll jump right in. All right, so job, ship to, and bill to. So it's very often that the customer that is paying us is not where we're doing the work and not who's going to benefit. So in the past, we've needed to have the difference between those. And so this is the job page. Those of you that use jobs will recognize it. However, you'll see something new here, the external document number and the your reference number. Those have been added to the job page, the basic job page. So that's something that's new. And then those of you that are astute will notice down here on the Invoice and Shipping tab that there's also that's been added. So let's take a closer look at that. So now on the Invoice and Shipping tab, like we have in other trade documents, we have the ability to choose a different invoice, a different bill to, and a different ship to. So like normal lookup lists, I can choose, stay with the default. I can do a different customer, or I can do a custom address. And then over in the ship to, you have a different lookup list into different addresses as well. So we can now recognize that we're doing the work somewhere, someone else is paying for it, but someone else might be benefiting. So nice consolidation with the other functional areas in the system to bring them consistent. And then you can see here on the custom address, I've chosen a different customer than we had on the basic job itself. Now, payment terms, payment method code, those do not default in yet. That is something that is due either next month or the month after. I forget when that's coming in. So they did not default those to bring those into new documents that are created from the job, but that is something that will be coming here shortly. So, and you can see here on the ship to that we have a different ship to address, right? So very consistent with the rest of how other documents are managed inside the system, and a nice change, nice update. New UI for variants and locations in the demand forecast. Now, when I say new UI, it's the functionality has been there as of actually version 19, but it was very awkward to try and enter into view. So they took some feedback, and now they've improved the demand forecast entry and view. So you can see there's a couple of new toggles here: the forecast by locations, forecast by variants. And the interaction of those is going to kind of depend on how you enter in the forecast. Now, of course, you can always import from Excel, right? Most of us do that if we're going to use a forecast. And so that has not changed, of course. But now you could just add a location, and by that I mean a nav location, Business Central location, and the variants. So let's see how that works out. So down here on the forecast, I've got a single item, and on my location, those of you that have seen a Business Central demo data before are familiar with how we nominate our locations with colors, blue, green, and white. And you can see here that I have some numbers in for the forecast for various months. So now, and planning, by the way, respects all of this. So if I'm planning for a particular location, the planning will also now be aware of those values, right? And if I go on to my next here and I toggle down, now I've got forecast by variance enabled. And recognizing that a few of you might be new to Business Central or evaluating Business Central, just a quick digression into what a variant is from a vocabulary perspective. Inside Business Central, a variant is how we have an item with almost the same characteristics, but that may vary by one characteristic. For example, color. That's probably one of the most common variants that we see out there. I've got my Turin desk chair, and it's available in different variants. And so on the under the menu bar under variants, item variants, we set those up. And in this case, I have set up a black, a camel, and a gray. I realized that I used colors the same or colors like for the variant, just like I did for locations. So don't confuse the two when we get to the next screen, right? So this chair is available in a black and a camel and a gray, right? So that's how we identify those, and then the forecast will take into consideration and allow us to enter in the forecast for the individual variant. So if I turn that toggle on, now I'm going to see that item. You can see 2006-W Turin and black camel gray are my options, and of course there's my forecast. And then finally, and don't laugh at me for the demo data, you probably wouldn't do it this way. You would probably be using a location, a forecast, but or both, and probably not an overall a blank value for those if you had variants and locations turned on. So the numbers don't quite add up here. I had one entered with no a forecast value entered with no location and no color, and so the numbers, if you're following along, look a little bit odd. But when I turn on both toggles now, and you can see I'm filtering for just a few locations, and you can see what my forecast looks like. And so this is all also follows through to planning. And in the planning side, if we have a different bill of materials, then we would set up stock keeping units and have a different bill of material for those as well. So nice new controls around how we would enter in forecasts by locations and variants. Was introduced last version, but now the way that we interact with those in this user interface has been dramatically improved. And the next slide is a little bit of a digression into how do I get this stuff turned on, right? How do I get these? Well, in most cases, when your tenant is upgraded, all the features come in automatically. However, there are some exceptions, and you have a little bit of control over some of them and whether you turn them on. And where you do that is in what we call feature management. So if you were to do a search, an Alt-Q search, you turn for feature management, it'll take you to a screen that's going to look something like this. And you can see that I can enable or disable. Now, we've turned some on for all users in our environment so that we could present them today. But for example, the demand forecast, that's right here. Enable new experience. I have turned it on for all users, and so it is available. So not every feature is automatically rolled out. There is some time to allow for evaluation. At some point soon, we'll start to see perhaps that the bank reconciliation, for example, will be something that you can turn on, or maybe it's already turned on. I forget. I think Holly. Oh no, there it is, right there. So you could turn that on through feature management now if you wanted to play with it. There are some that are, you can see that when they're proposed, so they're anticipating, for example, the new sales price experience to roll out in Q2 of 2023, right? So be aware of these features. You can turn them on early if you want to evaluate. And in some cases, you have that option. This is a small change, default locations on dimensions. So very often you'll want to have a dimension value associated with a nav, a Business Central location. Sorry, you can tell I'm old school. Nav is still in my vocabulary. I haven't fully gotten it out of that into the Business Central realm yet. I'm getting there. So dimensions, as you know, or if you're new and don't know, dimensions are that area where we categorize transactions for more detailed reporting and analysis. Principally, it's in the financial side for reporting, but also on the operational side as well. And in the past, we didn't have an easy way to get the Business Central location with a default dimension. And by default, I mean it's going to populate a new trade document when we create that document. Here I'm using, and if you've seen Business Central demos over the years, you know that area is a very common one. I like this one because it shows the indented nature of the values, and we can do our own totalings and subtotals at the dimension level even before we hit the financial chart of accounts. So those of you that are coming from perhaps GP or Solomon and reevaluating Business Central, sub-accounts is the Solomon world, and I forget what we call it in GP. It was just the chart of accounts, had that big hyphenated chart of accounts that was always unyielding. I think dimensions is a far more elegant way that we manage that reporting. So Um, but now we have a default on the location. And so if I look at my white location here, and you'll see there's a button up there for dimensions, and now I can associate that dimension value with my white location, and so I have that reporting for a balance sheet or any activity that comes out of the white location. So of course all the dimension rules are followed for dimension priorities, and that's if that's a surprise to you, then that's worth a further conversation on how we set up the dimensions in a more complicated way. Okay, on to the next, and this one, fixed quantity on the bill of material. I'm actually going to demo this live, and I have to give a shout out to our very own Kevin Fons. This resulted through a suggestion that Kevin made. There's a mechanism within Business Central to provide information to Microsoft about, hey, I think you should do this. And they look at that regularly, and the more votes that a particular feature or suggestion gets, it kind of bubbles up on the priority. And this one Kevin made, I think, about 3 years ago, so it took a while for it to get some steam, but now it's in there, and we'll take a look at this in the system. So let me just share my different screen here for a second. I want to change to this one. And so on my production bill of materials, fixed quantity, and let's go take a look at how that comes out. So first of all, we're going to find my bill of material. And those of you, again, that have been seeing Business Central demos for a long time, you'll be thrilled to know that bicycles are no longer the primary vehicle that we use. We have a whole new line of coffee makers that we're using to present and demo inside Business Central. It's nice to have a nice change, and the scenarios that they've created really give you a chance to test different scenarios with different flushing methods and such turned on to turn off. So you don't have to go through and do a lot of setup. You can get in there and quickly run through them inside this environment. So. But here's a production bomb. This is actually a subassembly, a reservoir assembly that we're using for our coffee makers. And you'll note down here, there's a column that I've exposed called the calculation formula. And you do need to expose this through personalization, or if it's global, you can do it through the designer. And you'll note here that it says it's a fixed quantity. It's a quantity of 1. All right, so that's my bill of material, how it's set up. So what that means is, regardless of the scrap, regardless of the quantity that we're producing, I'm still going to use 1 reservoir testing kit on that production order. So let's go look at a production order. So I have a firm plan production order here. And by the way, if you have any questions, don't forget to type those into the question and answer panel, and we can we'll address those as we reach the end here. So here's my production release production order, excuse me, a firm plan production order. Right now I have a quantity of 1 of these reservoir assemblies that we are going to put together. And if I look down here at the components, you'll note that, as you expect, I'm using 1 reservoir, 1 heating element, and 1 test kit, and it's a fixed quantity of 1. Well, what happens when I change the quantity? So here, let's make 115 of these. And now when we look into the line components, you'll see, as expected, that we have 115 of these components and such, but only 1 test kit is going to be consumed when I complete this production order. So there's lots of different examples of where this might be beneficial. If I've got a fixed number of pallets, for example, of output and so on. So you can probably think of different examples on your own, but it's a nice little feature that has been added into the production side of the world. Okay, rather than going to slides, the next one was support for warehouse in jobs. So when I say warehouse, it's incorporating inventory picks and warehouse picks for projects or jobs. Finally, so we can use warehousing for those environments. And this is also one I'm going to show you to you live. So I'm going to go into jobs for a second. This one I could probably spend a good 30 minutes on, so I'm going to have to rip through this here fairly quickly. And if you have interest in seeing something a bit more complex, if you're using advanced warehousing, for example, I'm doing an inventory pick this morning or this afternoon. But if you want to just see something in more detail, just reach out and I'm happy to walk you through it in more detail. But this is what a job looks like down here on my planning lines. If I were to look in my decorating and furnishings planning lines, you can see here that I have some inventory items in my planning lines that we are going to use on this particular job. Let me go here. So I have a Berlin desk chair and a Turin task chair. So you'll note here now that the location is enabled, and if I had bins turned on for this particular pick, I could also enable the bin, right? So I'm generating an inventory pick, tells the warehouse workers where to go grab it, and I pick it. So you can see that I have a quantity of 8 needed, quantity of 6 needed for these. So this is, of course, all new. And then so from the job, under more options, actions, we're going to go into warehouse and we're going to create an inventory pick, and you'll see that a pick now has been created. Let's go look at that pick. Now, the one thing, and this is a comment that I'll put into the feature management that I'd like to see is I'd like to see that the pick gives me a little bit more ability to filter by a phase or something when I generate that pick. Right now, it's going to generate a pick for everything that is on required for the job. So sorry. So this is the new pick that got created, the 6 that are remaining for this particular item. And then we go through the normal pick process. So and this is, I'm going to say that we're going to short pick this one. We're just going to register 3, and I'm going to post this pick. Now, if you're using handheld devices and so on, this activity would be exposed to the devices and all the usual stuff. So once I've posted this pick, now in the job world, what we do is we post this as usage from the inventory pick. So now we've posted some costs on this particular job. The inventory items have been delivered, and if you noticed before we started, we had roughly $300 worth of cost into the project. Now we have an additional 5 and change that results from those 3. So we've got some cost now associated into this job, and we are able to process that using an inventory pick. Right, so full support for everything in warehousing, whether you're using inventory picks, warehousing picks, warehouse picks, and so on, with bins, without bins. We have a lot of nice options. Finally bringing this into the job world, into the rest of the world like we do for production and other order processing. Okay, I have just 1 or 2 slides left. Let me switch over to my other screen here. I want to go here. Okay. Job report selection. So inside jobs now, we have it's been exposed to report selections. And if you're familiar with report selections, it's how we define which report gets run for particular activities. In this case, the initial thrust is for jobs to support the job quote. And in many times, you will need to print more than just the quote. You might have some supporting documentation, which is also a report, and so you can print that automatically. When I run that particular report, it will run both reports at the same time. And this is also one I wanted to show you, so let me go back into my other monitor here and go back into jobs. Give me just a second. And up here, report selection job, you'll see that Again, initially they're only supporting the quote. If you are familiar with this in other areas of the application, you'll see, for example, in sales, there's like 15 different entries in the usage here, and it's determined by which report is the base report. In this case, they've only exposed it for quotes. So you can see here that I've got a job quote and then one that's custom, which is 50,000, which is the Innovia job quote. So on a job, when I run that, and under reports, no, I have print the job quote. When I preview this, you'll see that I have the job quote that shows up, and I'll just cancel that one out. When I click cancel, now you'll see that the next one pops up. It's the Innovia job quote. That's that 50,000 report that we had. So it runs both automatically, and so we don't have to remember, oh, am I supposed to print something else associated with that quote, or it just prints automatically. So again, just a nice feature, and to me, it just exposes how we're seeing the other other areas of the system being brought into the fold with the way the base system has operated in the past. Okay, so that is the end of my slides, and the three of us got together and voted. Let me change back here real quick. And the winner is our top pick of the new features is the overall consolidation of how the Microsoft stack is being incorporated into Business Central. There simply isn't another application in the ERP space out there which is tightly coupled to what Microsoft is doing between Power Apps and SharePoint and all those other applications and Teams and Outlook. And we've just scratched the surface on these today. And so for us, the big winner in wave one is the way that the integration continues to be advanced more and more inside the Microsoft stack. So, okay, we're running just a smidgen long here. Let me just wrap up. And Angie, I think it's you. Oh, any questions? Let me see. No, you're a quiet group today, so no questions in the questions. If you've got one between now and when we wrap up, go ahead and type it in. Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you for joining us today and turn it back over to Angie.
All right. Thank you all, Jim, Holly, Gino. Appreciate the thoroughness on your presentation. Like Jim said, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to type them in. Otherwise, you can contact any one of those three or your account manager here at Innovia Consulting. So I just want to thank everyone for attending. And if you're watching on demand, we thank you for taking the time out to join us. And don't forget to check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's innovia.com/events. And also, don't forget about the Innovia Conversation podcast. Steve and Jeff have a library of podcast episodes, so check that out at innovia.com/podcast. And don't forget our training workshops. You can see all the workshops that we have coming up and ones that are on request at innovia.com/workshops. So check out the one that will fit your role. All right, well, thank you everyone, and we appreciate you being on today, and we hope to see you on another Innovia webinar. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everybody.